encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network. If you want to be a serious Bible student, a successful servant, and a powerful preacher, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Preachers in Training. My name is Robert Hatfield, and this is the podcast on which we discuss all things preaching and ministry. Thank you for being a part of Season 16, Episode 2. We're continuing on, going to the listener mailbag. We're looking at episode ideas that you submit. We're grateful for those, and today we're discussing ministering with and to your wife. Here to help us discuss that today is Dr. Milton Sewell, joining us. He's right here in Henderson, Tennessee. You're the chancellor for Freed-Hardeman University, and of course served as the president before that. Welcome, Dr. Sewell. Thank you for taking time with us today.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I have loved, now that we're back, observing again, as I did when I was a student, the relationship that you and Sister Laurel have, and the way that you prioritize her and show your respect for her in so many ways. Sometimes in ministry, and when we have others that are pulling at us in different directions, sometimes family are the ones who are neglected in those moments. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of preachers maybe can relate to some of that too. Even when we're trying to prioritize our marriages, it can still be difficult at times. And we're grateful for long-suffering spouses who are willing to work with us on some of that stuff as well. How long have you and Sister Laurel been married?
Laurel and I have been married 57 years.
All right.
We've known one another since she was a first grader at Mars Hill Bible School in Florence, Alabama.
Wow.
And I was a third grader. And our first little unofficial date, she was an 8th grader and I was a 10th grader.
Oh, really?
And we dated off and on for 7 years. And then after I'd finished college, we got together and got married. And so it's been a wonderful 57 years.
Oh.
It's had its challenges like any other marriage has had, I'm sure. But we've kept our priorities. God is first. Family is second. She is number 2 as far as God. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, family, children, work, friends, fun, and other things. But number 1 is, of course, God. Mm-hmm. And you have to be careful when you're in a ministry because you can very easily put too much emphasis on the God at the expense of your family. Mm-hmm. And the most important mission work you'll ever do in your life is to your wife and to your family. Mm-hmm. And if you lose them, you've really blown it to a great extent. Mm-hmm. You may save half the world, but if you don't save your wife and your children, you have made a serious mistake. And I can recall us talking about when we got married that we wanted to marry one another because we wanted somebody that could go to heaven with us. And if you keep that in your mind all the time, that you're looking to go to heaven with that spouse, and your actions speak much louder than even your words. I've seen some folks who can preach a great sermon on the Christian family, but they're blowing it. Others have done a great job in preaching it and living it. And so what you want to do is to not only speak it, but also live it. And so if you're going to be preaching about the importance of marriage, you need to model the behavior in your own marriage. And you need to show by your actions that your marriage is a top priority by the amount of time spent with her, the way you treat her, and the way you talk with and about her.
It can be difficult when you say, okay, God and family and work. And to your point a minute ago, in ministry, sometimes God and work sort of becomes the same thing.
Yes. And family get cut out.
That's right.
Unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. I found that people, when they call and say, hey, we'd like you to do this, or hey, can you come here or there or whatever, will understand when you say, well, I've already committed to doing this with my wife. I'd love to be there, but my family and I have this on the schedule already, or something like that. And I've heard this is more of a leadership trick than it may be a ministry trick, but it works. And I said, put something on your calendar, and that way, even if whether you explain it or not, you can say, I'm sorry, I'm already committed. Because some people won't respect the boundary of a family commitment. But if you say, I'm already committed, I don't think that's dishonest, and it's a way to keep that boundary that you need to prioritize your family and your marriage.
And I found that business people find the same difficult time in managing their time and effort. And unless they have a way of committing to it, they will also neglect their families.
Yes. So, I think you were speaking a moment ago to the importance of a minister prioritizing his marriage. You know, you mentioned that sometimes there are preachers who can preach a powerful sermon, but the sermon of their lives doesn't often match. And for many of us, that's a scary notion. For others of us, I think as preachers, that's something that we need somebody to sort of hold a mirror up to us and confront us about that.
Surely.
To your point a moment ago, I might baptize and help others to come to salvation and to Christ, a vast number of people, but I'm going to ruin my influence if I'm neglecting the mission field of the people in the adjacent bedrooms.
Exactly. Last Sunday on Father's Day, the way that you presented Jairus and his daughter, and how that Jesus handled that situation. I know it's sometimes said among preachers that Mother's Day, a mother can do no wrong in the sermon, and then the men go to church on the Father's Day and they get beaten up pretty badly.
Right.
Where you didn't do that, and I really appreciated that you elevated. There was a father, and he was so wanting his family to do okay. And so putting wives really where they need to be, and that's they're on a pedestal. They need to be on a pedestal.
That's right.
Because they are in your life, and and it really enhances your image and your effectiveness if your wife is respected and appreciated by you first, and then by others.
Sometimes even humor. I mean, I'm all about self-deprecating humor, and oftentimes I'm the easiest one to laugh at. But I've heard preachers, mount the pulpit and they'll launch one of these jokes that doesn't look real great about wives, or whether they're talking specifically about his wife or not. It's not always becoming. And I've even heard some of those jokes roll out, and then somebody says to somebody else in the pew, I wonder what it's like to live at his house.
Oh, yes.
Yes. That's not the image we want.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
I think about 1 Peter chapter 3, where Peter says, hey, you better make sure you're dwelling with your wife according to knowledge. And he goes on to say, lest your prayers be hindered.
Yes.
So there's even a spiritual ramification to my relationship with her.
Of course, I maintain that if you listen very carefully to your wife, you have a lifelong commitment to her. In fact, I went back and asked for our wedding vows. I wanted to see for the preacher that I preached, that spoke at our wedding. I wanted to see what I committed to when I said I do. And it was exactly what I thought. I'd used the same kinds of things in vows. And I've always thought it would be a nice thing if on any wedding and most all weddings that I've done, I will go ahead and give them a copy of the things that they have committed their lives to, and say, hold on to this and read those at the 25th and the 50th and the 75th wedding anniversary.
Yes.
And that will help you. But listen to, when things go wrong, be willing to apologize and ask for forgiveness, and just be as ready to give forgiveness, and don't be bringing up past junk.
Yeah,
it doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do her any good, and it just delays that good relationship that you can have. And by the way, the older you get, the relationship should get richer and better. I'm more in love with Laurel than I was the day that I got married, and it's a richer, deeper, more wonderful, more satisfying love than it was. And I'm hoping that she'll hang on for it. We can have a renewal ceremony on our 75th down the way.
Yes.
Praise your wife. The Bible says in Proverbs 31:28, her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. You ought to lead the way in praising your wife. And when folks ask how your wife is, you have an opportunity to give praise to her and let them know the good thing. You may have had a disagreement somewhere along the way, but you work through that. But you don't do yourself any good by going out and criticizing your wife, and she doesn't do any good by going out and criticizing you. But withhold any criticism. That's not the place for it. Praise her. Remember that you are modeling for your children. They're watching mom and dad to see, are they for real? Is what they're studying from the Bible real? And can I build a marriage on that? I see a lot of really good, solid marriages in the people that I work with.
Yes.
Solid. Their children are solid in their marriages. And I think with that kind of thing, that stability that you have, it can make for a wonderful life. Someone has mentioned, said, listen to your wife, be aware of her wants and needs. You need to be aware of what her wants and needs are. And she also needs to know the same about you. She doesn't need to be guessing how you are feeling or what's going on. You're not, but I'm amazed at Laurel. She says that she can tell when I hit the step on the porch and walk across the porch.
Yeah.
Coming in, whether I've had a good day or not. And sometimes she'll ask me, "Well, you must have had a good day today," or "Things didn't go too well today," or something's bothering you. The way you walked across that porch. And back in the old days, they'll say, "Well, he had a bad day. He kicked the cat as he came in." Well, you get once you have a good marriage, you can tell whether that mate has had a good day or a bad day, and you can work with it. I wanted to mention one other thing. Male leadership does not mean male dominance.
Yes.
Husbands are still to be respectful and loving of their spouses. And if you disrespect your wife, it comes back on you that you made a bad decision yourself when you made that decision and that lifelong commitment. And none of us marry the person that we don't know everything about that person when we marry them, and that we just learn it. And which brings up another little thing I'd like to share if I could.
Great.
I've seen some young people who got baptized early in their lives, and somebody would tell them, "You need to go back because you didn't know enough when you got baptized." And I've looked at that and thinking, you remember when you got married or I got married, we didn't know everything. We don't go back and get remarried every time we find out something new about the other. And that's the way it is as a Christian. You don't have to go back and be rebaptized just because you're learning and growing and didn't know all that. In fact, you're expected not to know everything.
That's right.
When you become a Christian. So
that's a good point. I was thinking about how disorienting it is for a child. Maybe they don't realize it in the moment, but when mom and dad don't model, and particularly a preacher's child, when mom and dad don't model what dad has preached about how marriage is supposed to be, and the children may not stand up against it in those moments, but later down the line when they're trying to grapple with how to deal with adult issues, or figure out how to deal with marriage or how to solve conflict within a marital environment or whatever it is, that's disorienting.
Yes.
And the negative part of that is, even more negative than what I've just said, is then you begin to doubt whether the biblical model is really all that great. And shame on us if we ever taint God's perfect view of this wonderful gift of marriage.
Colossians 3:18 and 19 just are powerful.
Yeah.
In how do we relate to our wives. It says, wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord, and husbands, love your wives, and do not be harsh with them. Do not be harsh with them. I maintain that we need to be as kind and careful and loving of our spouses as we are our employer. Or our employees,
That's right.
or our friends, or mothers, or dads, and then Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, and he gave himself up for her. And there's so many good biblical principles that we have that we can deal with.
I think it's so intriguing that Paul addressed specifically to husbands and fathers, don't be harsh, and love. And that's direct commands, and that's like targeted, like men are told, hey, you're supposed to be this way. And yet those are the very qualities that sometimes in our society we stereotypically excuse. Well, he can't help that he's harsh. That's just his personality, or whatever. And it's like, well, no, apparently I'm supposed to grow out of that.
Laurel and I were talking about this, obviously, before we came here. And she mentioned, it's out of context, Song of Solomon 1, verse 6. They set us as a keeper of the vineyard, but my own vineyard was neglected or I did not keep. And that's out of context.
Sure.
But the idea is
principle there.
You're going out and taking care of everybody else's vineyard, but you're not taking care of your own, not taking care of. And what did they used to say? The cobbler's children were the ones that had the worst shoes, or he didn't repair their shoes. But a Christian, that's not the way to handle it.
Right.
And certainly as a leader, a moral, spiritual leader, you have a responsibility to lead your family.
That's right. I don't know why it's as difficult as it is to actively invest in marriage amid all the difficulties, the demands of ministry. It seems simple just to say out loud. I guess maybe things arise, and a lot of times ministry is a ministry of putting out fires as they come up from here to there. And I find that there are seasons where it's busier than other seasons. We're recording this in the summertime, and VBS is coming up, and there's just a lot of things that are happening in congregational life, and those are all good things. And yet, if I'm not actively investing at home, well, then I'm never really going to grow in that. And at most, and at least, I'm not going to express the appreciation or invest the time that I should. Perhaps we overcomplicate it, but it's fairly simple. It just takes a little bit of intentionality, maybe. Yes. Would you agree with that? Or what else do you have there?
Absolutely. One of the things that many good families will tell you that they do is they strictly set times when the family, for instance, the family, they may not be able to eat breakfast together, but they can have dinner together. Yeah. Or if they can't have dinner together, you're going to be together over breakfast. One sitting down around the table where there's conversation. And the speaker that's coming to the benefit dinner this year, I just read his book, and he was talking about how that they see that the dinner around the dinner table is their time of the day. Really? And they talk, and every person has a chance to talk about what's happened that day. You're listening to what they're saying, and you can learn things from your children. That time that it's extremely valuable to them, but it's also valuable to them. And just spending together, a time together as a couple, is important. Just sitting together in a swing or a short getaway together. One of the things that Laurel she's really made our family a wonderful family. She would, on occasions, on a few occasions, she would kidnap me. I was so involved in what I was doing. She'd go to the secretaries and say, I think I could count on one hand the times that she's done it. But I would be so involved, and she'd go to the secretary and say, let's look at the next couple of days. And one day, I remember the first time she did it, she showed up and had a suitcase in the car.
Yeah.
The children were going to the grandparents, and all my appointments had been canceled or rescheduled.
Sure.
And every one of those people whose appointment was scheduled, they were told why it was that she's taking him out of town, and giving him some time away.
Yeah. And
I've always appreciated that.
Wow.
And one of the things that I've tried to do with her Christmas, I give her a bottle of pills for her. I have given her several bottles of pills.
Bottles of pills?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. And what I do is I'll take and write down 52 different things. One time it was, these are 52 things we'll do during this year, one per week.
Yes.
And I'll take it, I'll go down to the pharmacist, and they'll always give me pills and a bottle. And I put those, cut those little strips up, put them in a pill, and then she can take one out per week, and we'll do whatever it says.
Wow.
And you can use your imagination to do that. And one year I just said, these are the most memorable and wonderful times that we've had together. Or another one would be the things I like most about you. And she gets to take one of 52, per week. And it's the little things like that. And she doesn't throw those away. And she doesn't say you spent too much on that. But it's a way of showing her that you have tremendous respect for her. And the children notice it as much as anybody else. They recognize how good mom is, and dad recognizes it. And that's one way of showing it. So,
I imagine it takes a little time to get pieces of paper rolled up inside a pill.
The bigger the pill, the better.
They give you like a horse pill or
something.
something.
A little bigger. But, I'll put them all in a bottle, and that's what her Christmas present is. Or it could be a birthday or an anniversary or whatever. Use your imagination, but do something yourself. Going and buying something that's easy. Yeah. But doing something that really is meaningful can be very helpful. So that's really helpful. Always celebrate birthdays with her. Always be able to say how many anniversaries how long you've been married. When did you get married? Talk about those times, because that was a defining moment. Yes. And look back at it as one of the most defining moments of your life. Becoming a Christian is one, but being married to that wonderful wife is a most important defining. And she thinks it's a defining moment. Yes. And so do I. And so speak well of her all the time. Never talk badly about her out to others. It doesn't do any good for you. That's right. Wow. This has been great, and I love these practical tips that we can offer to help us invest, and it's just a matter of taking the time. I love that when you said she kidnaps you. That's so neat. Well, it was the nicest compliment. Sure. And that's right. We went off and spent a day or so, and it just solidifies your marriage. Right. And it may be that she, you're for a young preacher who has children, and the mom has been there with them all day long. Right. I was the way I worked with Laurel on that. I saw so much stress sometimes. A child maybe had a cold, or you have all the childhood things. Sure. And moms just get worn out. And so I would say I'm going to get a babysitter for a Friday night, and we're going to see a movie. I'm taking you out for dinner. And of course, money was short. And the way I dealt with that, and we still deal with this sometimes, I said, I heard today that it cost, at that time, it was $50 an hour for a psychiatrist. And I thought, if we don't get you some time that you can relax,
Right.
we'll have to go to a psychiatrist.
Yes.
And it won't be just one time.
Right.
But at that time, we could go out for $25 a night.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, we're saving money. I'm saving money by taking you out
Yes.
for this. And so being aware of her situation,
Mm-hmm.
and you can tell when you come in the evening. Now, wives, when your wives are as wonderful, and I'm sure I know your wife
Yes,
is
sir.
this way. Mm-hmm. But I used to get amused. I'd drive in from work, and I'd see her working in the kitchen, and the garage went right up, and there was a window into the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
I'd walk in the house, and she was gone. And I'd the first time or two I'd ask, but what I found out she was doing, she said when she saw me coming up, she stopped. She ran to the bedroom, checked her hair, checked her lipstick or makeup or whatever.
Uh-huh.
She wanted to see how she looked.
Oh.
And I thought, what a compliment
Yes.
that she showed. And I think we as husbands have a responsibility to present our best to them.
Sure.
I think you still need to date.
Mm-hmm.
Do some dating. What was it that got you together? And what was it that you saw in her that was so different?
Mm.
And of course, the greatest decision you ever make is when you decide who you're going to marry.
Yes.
And that's really a good time. But once you've already married, you can build it, make it better.
Right. Wow. All right. So switching gears just a little bit, we've talked about ministering maybe to our wives. You know, the reality is often ministry doesn't have to always be in competition with family. In fact, we can involve family and maybe minister with our wives in a variety of ways. Any thoughts on how we can do some of that?
Lots of make visits with your wife. They'll be many times more happy to see her.
That's right.
Than they will you.
And then, she ought to be the main attraction, shouldn't she?
Right,
That's right.
Right. And then the second thing about that is women have a sense of perception that you and I do not have.
Yes.
God put it there. Mm-hmm. And they will pick up on things that you and I will not, we will miss it sometimes. And for good or ill. But I usually discuss my sermon topics with her.
Yes.
And get her insight as to what areas. And sometimes it's completely off the wall. It's different from what I had even thought, but it was a lot better many times. Share your goals and plans with her so that you're always on the same page. She needs to know. You don't need to keep her in the dark. Finances, whatever. Encourage each other in your individual ways of serving. She may have her own ministry. And women have a way of ministering to other women.
That's right.
That we can't. But, help with the chores, help with child care. This is one way that we can minister to our wives. Come in and give her some relief. Take the children for a walk, or take them, go get a cone of ice cream with them or something. Give her some time. One of the things that, and I would just say to guys, you learn, it starts many times in the kitchen. The marital relations start in the kitchen. Helping out, washing the dishes, cleaning up the table. She's not your servant.
Right.
She will help serve, but she's very important. And any way you can give her a little bit of relief can make a difference in her life and yours too.
Yes, that's right. I love this. Super practical stuff. This is great. Sometimes when we're involving our wives in ministry, they can be exposed to the parts of ministry that aren't so great. And I think we have to be aware of that. I know some preachers who choose not to really let their wives in at all on maybe the negative things, the stressors, fill in the blank here, right? Some people talk about trouble with elders at times, or deacons, or that Christian brother or sister who can sometimes be a little persnickety. At other times, I know some preachers who swing completely the opposite direction, and they let their wives in on all of that. And sometimes that comes at the expense of, well, now the wife is having to bear all that burden that I'm bearing as well, and maybe even in an unnecessary way, maybe in an unhealthy way.
Right.
Can we balance that? Do you have any thoughts or tips on how we can do that?
I think you have to. I think you have to know your wife.
Yes.
You have to know where her trigger points are.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that causes stress on her? And what can she know that is helpful to her?
Yeah.
I can recall my dad, who was an elder for 57 years. I would hear my mom say, "Dad slept on a problem last night, but I don't know what it was." And he didn't let her know because he felt like it was best for her not to know.
Yes.
But there were other things that he could share with her because he didn't want her stepping out and saying something that could come back to hurt the situation.
Or sometimes somebody will come up to my wife, for example, and say, "Hey, do you know about this?" And I'm always glad in some of those moments when she can say, "Well, no, I actually don't know anything about that."
Right.
We're protecting her in that way.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to really avoid gossip.
Yes.
In those situations, and men and women both gossip. It can happen in both. So you have to be careful about what you say. When I was in administration and working, I had to be very careful because there could be lawsuits.
Yes.
Very easily. And there's some things that are more damaging than the lawsuits, and that's wounded people. You've hurt people because of something you or your spouse or someone has said. So share the problems that you can with her. She may see a blind spot that you're not seeing.
Right.
And she can be helpful. Those are just trying to keep balance is an important thing.
I think what you said there at the beginning too is so important. Know her, know what she can handle or can't handle. We don't ever want to break confidence, right? And
right.
I tell people when they come to meet with me and they ask for privacy, I say, "Hey, even my wife, to the extent that that's appropriate, she will not know what's going on." So I said, "Don't assume that she does, because she knows I'm meeting with you right now. She doesn't know what this is about," which I think is important.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me talk a little further about that.
Good.
Because having been in school business, I saw not a lot, and not a lot of preachers either. But I've seen some preachers that have been blindsided or and hurt, and so you go into a conference with a woman,
Right,
in a different way than you do with a man.
that's right.
And the one thing is, you never want to be in that room where there's nobody there that can know. And so my first official act at Freed-Hardeman, when I came as president in 1990, was to have a big hole cut in the door between my office and the secretary's office, and put a window.
Good.
And then I asked her to always watch. If that door, usually when a female was in the office, I did not want the door closed.
Right.
But if it were closed, I wanted her staying right outside. And even if it went to 6 o'clock in the evening, don't leave, because you just cannot afford your reputation. And men are fixers, and we will try to sometimes to fix people's problems, and it comes back to bite men. So be careful about your own reputation, and your wife needs to know that she can trust you in talking with those folks that are coming in. They're coming in many times hurting. Good counseling classes for preachers are very helpful, because you're in a natural state of giving advice.
Yeah.
But I've seen some great leaders ruined because they weren't careful about that female-male relationship.
That's right.
And so just have your own policies adopted, and your wife knows what those are.
That's right.
You talk them out.
Let her come up with those too. Yeah.
Sure.
I call those ethical safeguards. It's just good to have those in place, isn't it? Yeah.
And Laurel has on several occasions has been able to say, "You be careful
Yes.
around this person," and I had not seen it.
Mm.
I had not seen the danger. Later on, I did,
Yes.
but she saw it way before I did, and I was so happy to have her perspective.
And being the kind of person, or developing the kind of character that A, will listen to that kind of counsel, but B, will encourage her to offer you that kind of counsel,
Right.
is really important.
It
Yeah.
really is. You're a team.
Yes.
And you don't need a weak member in the team. You need to work together in the team. And your strengths are not her strengths, and her
Yes.
strengths are not your strengths. And her weaknesses are not your weaknesses many times, and your weaknesses are not hers. And so the Lord knew what he was doing
Yes.
when he put a man and woman. And aren't we glad?
Yes.
Aren't we happy
Absolutely.
about that?
Yeah. And he made us different. And
Yes.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yes.
Incidentally, we're recording this in my office here at the Henderson Church Building, Henderson Church of Christ Church Building. And Ben Flatt designed this office complex when he was here. I think this wing was built during his tenure as minister.
Yes.
And some people who watch the videos of the podcast notice that my door has a giant window on it.
Yes.
They'll see the people passing by on the shows that we're recording, and that's been happening today as well. But Brother Ben told me that was part of the reason why he wanted a window like that,
Yes.
just for the ethical safeguards.
Yes.
Another thing he did was he had a computer desk installed against the wall, so your computer monitor is always visible to the people who might be passing by.
Yes.
It's just a safeguard. It's not a matter of trust. It's just a matter of, let's be sure that we're always above board. Yeah.
Wisdom. It takes some wisdom.
Yes.
Laurel and I have, every day we read a proverb. We read the Proverbs 12 times a year, and have been doing that for a good while. And the wisdom that you find in those Proverbs are so valuable. And so I keep finding them after reading them several years. There'll be something that'll come up, and that relates.
Yes.
And we do that together.
Ah.
And when you have small children, you probably can't do that, but it doesn't take long,
Right.
to read the Proverbs together. But and I noticed that David Shannon and his family started out reading, and his parents read the Proverbs to them every day.
Wow.
And so it's
helpful.
It's wisdom.
Right.
Good wisdom.
Yeah.
And it's wisdom from a father to his son.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you read it from that context,
Right.
we guys are getting some good wisdom. And there's a lot of good wisdom in other places.
Sure.
James, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I need all the wisdom I can get.
Yes. Yeah.
I was thinking, when I was thinking about maybe some of the questions I'd like to ask you about what Hebrews 13:4 says. And I think this is such an important passage that maybe we as preachers ought to think on more often. And I think especially in our culture, we ought to preach on it and at least reference it quite often as well, where the Hebrew writer says, let marriage be held in honor among all. We're living in a culture that needs to hear a message like that marriage is honorable. Would you mind maybe sharing your thoughts just as we sort of begin to land the plane of the podcast? What makes marriage so great?
Companionship, shared goals, shared memories, shared experiences, a shared faith. I don't know how you could have a really good marriage and your faith, you didn't share the same faith. But and my mother and dad were married 72 years, and my wife's parents were married 59 years.
Wonderful.
And so we've had good examples of couples that loved one another, respected one another, and did things together, and weathered the depression of the 30s, went through the hard times. When a marriage is good, you have someone who loves you most of all. That's right there with you. And what you want is a good marriage and a healthy marriage. Someone who shares both joys and sorrows with you. They've been with you through those down times and high times. And my greatest emotional highs are with my wife. And there's nobody that I'd rather be around than her. And I love people. I've been around a lot of people.
Yes.
But when it comes down to it, I can go in and be with her. That's so important. And you build a legacy of shared moments, shared values. Those are accomplishments. It's going to be a legacy of many fun things. Our children ask us to sit down and write a bit of our biography. They wanted to know, and they wanted their children to know.
Oh.
So we separately sat down and wrote what then we combined it into just a thing and gave it to them for Christmas.
Oh.
And Christmas around the Christmas table starts as a breakfast in the morning about 9. And that day, I think we wound up leaving the table. They sat there and read through that whole thing together.
Yes.
Until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, wow.
And they would laugh and the things that we'd talked about, and they would add things that they remembered. And
Yes.
And I thought that you don't get any better.
That's right.
And I know some very, very successful people, business-wise, who have done really well with their families. But I'm thinking of 2 really good friends of mine who have been super successful. And they'd say, Milton, I've been successful at everything I've done except my marriage.
Oh.
And they've said, I've blown it. The one is with about his 4th or 5th wife now, and I don't think they'll ever be completely happy and content. And they watch our marriage, and
Yes.
they say they just can't comprehend. What do you do? It sounds like it's bland, but it's not.
Right.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
A good marriage. A marriage partner can be a guardrail against bad behavior. You help each other to be balanced. And so when you're keeping one another out of trouble, there's a balanced marriage, a good marriage. And marriage is what you make of it. If you want a good marriage, you can make it. And the guy can take the leadership. That's one place a husband can be a leader. He can be a leader in compassion, patience, initiative, in wisdom. He can be a person that leads his family in worship.
Yes.
But of course, it takes a wife. I remember when our children were small, and Sunday morning was tough.
Hectic.
Oh, getting dressed, and one would be unhappy, and Laurel, the sweet thing, would get in the car, and everybody's mad at everybody else. It seemed like, and she'd start singing "Seek Ye First," and she'd sing it until everybody was singing it. About the time we drove into the church parking lot, everybody was singing it, and they were feeling better about themselves. And we went in, we're prepared to worship. But there's some things you can do as a husband. Open doors for her. That started when I started dating Laurel. I opened doors for her. And because I really wanted to impress her.
Yes.
She could open the door.
Yeah.
And I'd have to say, let me open the door for you, whether it's to the car or to the house or whatever. And then went through children, and then it dawned on me, hey, I need to still be doing that. So I have to ask her, it'll take us a little longer to get out of the car, but let me come around and get the door, open the door for you. And I'm doing that not just for me. I want our children to see it. I want our grandchildren to see it.
Yes.
And I want it to be an example to others that I respect this woman so much that I'm going to open a door for her anytime I can.
Wow.
Compliment her attractiveness. You not only see the outer beauty, but also you see that inner beauty that's there, that kind, patient, sometimes frustrated person. And yet you compliment her. Yes. Never belittle her or put her down, especially at home or anywhere.
Right.
That's just not our place to do that. You can have good discussion. It's the old don't get mad, but we need to care. We need to talk about some things.
Yeah.
But those are things that have made our 57 years, and we've grown into it. It's not just started out. You start out selfish sometimes. You start out greedy sometimes, and you just have to work through those, becoming two and working together. Mm-hmm. And we're not as close as one fellow said. I'll eat watermelon and the other one spits out the seeds. We're not that close, but you can grow very close.
Yes.
I used to go out every morning for breakfast. I'd go out just to be with the guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to noticing that men who had lost their wives, they would say, "Oh, I didn't spend enough time with her." Mm. "Oh, I would give anything in the world to be with my wife." And you listen to several of those guys talking, and they've missed their wives so badly. And then you realize, I'm blowing this. Yeah. And so I'd rather be with her than any other man in the world, whether you can laugh and have fun. But
right.
So breakfast is our get together since we are just the two of us.
Oh, that's neat. You mentioned the example of your parents and of her parents, and today you've not only shared their example, but the example that the two of you are with all of us, and we appreciate that very much. Thank you. It means a lot.
Well, we thank the Lord.
Well, yes,
the
sir.
Lord, He put this plan in place.
Yes.
And if we work His plan, it is a joy.
That's
a
right.
Blessing.
And there's no reason why really anyone who's married, but we're talking to preachers today, can't know that blessing and experience that.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
Ministering with and to your wife. Hey, we want to thank you for being a part of this episode today. Don't forget, check us out at thelightnetwork.tv for episode archives, subscription links, video, audio, the whole thing. It's all right there. Love to hear from you. Preachers at thelightnetwork.tv is our email address. We welcome your comments and questions and episode ideas, of course, all the time. If you enjoy the podcast, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes of Preachers in Training release on Thursdays from thelightnetwork.tv and our podcast partners. Dr. Sewell, we appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for the work that you do and for the life that you live. It means so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of our episode today. Until next time, let's go preach the word.